Imagine watching that for the first time, all the way back in the year 2000. The same year that in-game graphics look like this. Now, I'm not saying these look bad by any means, but compared to the level of detail and realism that CGI FMVs offered at the time, they obviously can't even begin to compare. I mean, that was the whole point, after all. These immediately grabbed your attention, just due to how different they looked from in-game. I remember as a kid, I'd be casually, nonchalantly playing a Final Fantasy or something, and then when one of these bad boys popped up, I'd be at the edge of my seat. It sort of felt like a reward for completing a certain part of the game. They always came at important story events too, so you knew you were in for a treat. Speaking of treats, those FMV intros we would get sometimes before the game starts? Dude, these were insanely cool. I would get so hyped watching these before a gaming sesh. They were just so graphically far ahead of what we were used to seeing at the time. Keep in mind, this was the console generation just after the Super Nintendo. To go from cutscenes like that to cutscenes like this in just 5 years is absolutely crazy. They became true glimpses into the worlds that the developers really wanted you to see. The sense of immersion these FMVs provided was just unlike anything else at the time. For those that don't know, I should explain real quick. FMV stands for full motion video. Usually this would be a CGI cutscene, as is the main focus of this video. However, it doesn't technically have to be. Anime cutscenes would also count, as well as those live action segments that some games would do. I'm not going to talk about these here though. These weren't really ahead of their time, or more like a product of their time. Well, the live action stuff that is. A lot of those anime FMVs look awesome. Maybe I'll talk about them in another video. Anyway, obviously FMVs were not exclusive to the PlayStation, but when I think of the old classic CGI cutscene, the PS1 is definitely the first system that comes to mind. Excluding the PC, the PS1 was undoubtedly the king of FMVs. I mean, some of the Sega Saturn's best showcases of CGI, like Panzer Dragoon Saga, did look amazing for the time, but yeah, compared to Final Fantasy VIII just a year later, it kind of gets blown out of the water. Hell, I'd even argue Final Fantasy VII the year prior had better CGI. And the N64 and FMVs, I don't even think that was a thing. I don't think a single N64 game had CGI cutscenes. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. In fact, the N64 version of various titles would just straight up remove these. Like Gex, Enter the Gecko on the PS1. Really cool CGI cutscene to start the game, complete with voiceover.
For 2 years I started my day watching Kung Fu theater. Days, then weeks blurred into one long, greasy telethon. The next thing I know, some government goons show up at my place. It seems they've caught a whiff of old Mr. Sunshine himself. Rez!
The N64 version though? Nah, just plops you right down in the hub world with zero context. This was the version I had as a kid, and even back then I remember thinking, damn, the game just starts. Then you got 40 Winks. Beautiful pre-rendered cutscene on the PlayStation version, whereas then on the N64, we instead get a cutscene using in-game models. Credit given when it's due though, this is animated really well. The N64 did technically have the power to do FMVs, however, they often cut these out just to save space. I saw this one post where someone asked AI what it would take to port Xenogears over to the N64 in its complete form, and apparently it would take 25 cartridges, an expansion pack, extra RAM, and the data would need to be compressed. Now, compare that to just the 2 discs it took on the PS1. So yeah, the PS1 and FMVs, absolutely goated. On this majestic crown of the FMV king, the biggest jewel was definitely Squaresoft. They were so far ahead of most of their competition, they were practically in their own league. Compare Beyond the Beyond to Final Fantasy VII just a year later. I mean, the little guy tried, but yeah, might as well just be a tech demo in comparison. They could barely even animate them walking forward, then you got Squaresoft giving us these really fluid action set pieces. This was already super impressive for the time, ahead of its time actually, so what's crazy to think is that it got even better. Much better in fact. Personally, I think Final Fantasy VIII, Final Fantasy IX, and Chrono Cross had the most stunning FMVs on the entire console. Parasite Eve 2 also looks really damn good. Hell, some of these games' CGI even looks better than some PS2 games. Shadow Hearts anyone? You could say that a lot of PS1 CGI hasn't really aged that well unless you have nostalgia for it. However, with these games, that is not the case. Honestly, I think these have held up excellently for the most part and still look really good today. It just goes to show how ahead of their time they truly were. How was Square able to perform this magic all the way back in the late 90s though? Well, part of the reason is that in games like Final Fantasy VIII, they were able to make the movement look so smooth and realistic because they actually got real-life actors to perform them. This motion capture technology allowed them to animate these scenes with very accurate detail. Like, check out this clip of Zell's flips. Pretty cool stuff. And then of course, you got the iconic ballroom scene. This was an absolute technical marvel and surely blew the mind of anyone watching it back in 1999. It's not only one of the most memorable scenes in the entire Final Fantasy series, but it was just a landmark for video game technology at the time. Hell, I remember being in tech class back in middle school, and one day we watched a tape about stunning displays of video technology, and there was a whole segment on this very scene. I was so hyped when this part came up. I was like, yeah dude, I know, it looks amazing, doesn't it? Nothing got me as hyped as the landing in Dollet FMV though. They started off the demo with this and holy shit, they knew exactly what they were doing. First impressions are everything, and this was my introduction to the series when I was like 8 years old. You can only imagine how blown away I was. I probably played this demo like 20 or 30 times, no joke. By the way, who else had that little Pizza Hut demo disc this came on? It came with this, and Tony Hawk, and Crash Team Racing, and Ape Escape, and Cool Borders 4, I think. Man, what a legendary disc. Anyway, what's pretty cool is that there's actually 2 versions of this FMV. Same with the escaping FMV too. The demo versions have the characters in their regular clothes, a different music track when landing, Renoa has replaced Selfie, and we get a generic soldier firing the machine gun instead of Quistis. I just think it's really cool that Square went the extra mile to make 2 versions of these. They knew the greatness they had on their hands and wanted to make sure first-time players got the full effect. I'm gonna talk about a lot more FMVs in way more detail later, but these were just some examples to give you guys a bit of an idea of how ahead of their time they truly were. FMVs did still live on after the PS1, they just started showing up less and less over the years. They were still fairly common on the PS2 and Dreamcast, and we did get some awesome examples here. Like the CGI in Final Fantasy X and 12, absolutely gorgeous. By the time the PS3 and Xbox 360 came out though, graphics had gotten so good at that point that the difference between cutscenes and regular gameplay had become pretty minute. Like check out the beginning of Lost Odyssey. The transition between the opening cutscene and getting in your first battle is so incredibly smooth. As a kid, this completely floored me. When analyzing it now though, it's a little bittersweet as it's kind of the end of an era. To many people, I'm sure the seamless transition and lack of disconnect between cutscenes and gameplay is probably a good thing. However, to those of us that grew up on the era of PS1 FMVs, we're just always gonna have a soft spot for them. Hell, I used to make multiple save files just so I could go back and watch a lot of these again. These FMVs captivated the minds of so many gamers that I just wanted to show them a little appreciation here. This will sort of be like a follow-up to our video about pre-rendered backgrounds. If you haven't seen that one, maybe give it a watch after. It'll follow a similar format in the sense that I'm going to talk about a lot of my favorite examples across various genres. Probably won't talk about as many games this time though, but I will spend longer on each one. This video's all about the vibes of these FMVs, and coincidentally, our channel intro features a lot of them. So, sit back and relax, grab yourself some snacks, and enjoy this little sneak peek of what's to come.
The light is your guide.
A dream is what keeps you going.
Alright, I know I've talked about the Final Fantasy games a lot already, but I might as well just finish up my thoughts about them before moving on. Final Fantasy VII essentially gave us 3 styles of FMVs. They all use pre-rendered CGI, however the character models would differ. Sometimes we would just get the regular in-game models, other times we would get a higher quality version of those same models, and then finally we'd get all new pre-rendered CGI models. The latter obviously look the best, they just didn't happen super often. The former do still have some great examples though. That Star Room in Cosmo Canyon is super atmospheric and immersive, and the whole Rocket Town flying away on a plane scene is a really cool action sequence. We already showed most of it earlier, but the FMV of them escaping Shinra is probably my favorite in the game. Who could forget Sephiroth's reveal too? Back in 1997, this was chills, dude. That being said though, the most impressive thing about Final Fantasy VII's FMVs are definitely not the models. In fact, they're pretty outdated by today's standards, but rather it's the environments themselves. We get a lot of zoomed out shots to display the sheer scope of various places. I mean, you got Midgar to start the game, excellent idea on their end, Junon a short while later, and then of course the Gold Saucer. Truly a dazzling sight to behold. The first time I saw this, man, breathtaking. Final Fantasy VII has many other great FMVs, but considering we're in the midst of the remake trilogy being released, let's not spoil anything. You already know, Final Fantasy VIII's FMVs are just jaw-dropping. They looked amazing back then and still look really good today, I think. I didn't even talk about the intro earlier, so let's do that now. I mean, what is there really to say? It's one of the greatest openings in any video game ever. That epic music, that vague, mysterious text, Renoa in that field of flowers, Squall and Cypher fighting at the end, it's just perfect. How about that gore at the end though? I'd never seen blood like that in a video game before, and it just made me feel like I was playing something so mature and edgy. Man, Cypher really is a colossal dick for this one though. Like, dude, we're just sparring. If you were like an inch or two deeper, you would have sliced my face in half. Jesus, dude, calm down. Anyway, this is just a legendary FMV to start the game. You knew you were in for something special seeing this. Overall, the CGI was just a huge improvement over Final Fantasy VII, especially the character models. This is a night and day difference. Squaresoft knew it too. Every party member has their own FMV to introduce them. We get a glimpse of their personalities too. Selphie's clumsy, Zell's got a lot of energy to burn off, Irvine is chill and laid back, and yeah, you get the idea. We just get a lot more FMVs in general here compared to 7, and it's awesome. Like the Sorceress Parade alone, we get like over 5 minutes of FMVs. It really makes this part feel memorable. What's also memorable is how Final Fantasy VIII would transition into FMVs. I mentioned this in the pre-rendered background video, but it's worth bringing up again. They're just so damn smooth. Sometimes you can even control Squall while an FMV is going on in the background. Like that part where you fight that soldier in the sky. So cool, man. Final Fantasy VIII just has such unique and phenomenal art direction that seeing it depicted in this style with this much detail will always be a feast for my eyes. It's one of the coolest fictional worlds ever created, and the FMVs absolutely play their part in bringing it to life. Simply put, Final Fantasy IX's FMVs are straight up gorgeous. The level of polish and detail for the year 2000 is just unreal. Once again, we get another FMV opening to start the game. However, this one was quite a bit different than 8's. Whereas 8 gave us more of the typical video gamey intro with the music and the montage of various scenes, 9 on the other hand gave us more of like a cinematic opening to a movie instead. This FMV doesn't technically say anything, but at the same time, it tells us so much. We know that Garnet has some mysterious past. We also know she's a princess of some sorts. We know Zidane is traveling on some airship. We know we're in some medieval steampunk world, and we know that Vivi's adorable. It's a masterclass of showing and not telling. The game really hits the ground running when it comes to FMVs. Also near the beginning of the game, we get the whole escaping from Alexandria sequence, its subsequent crash into the evil forest, and the escape from the evil forest itself. The latter is especially captivating. The running is animated so well, and there's just so much tension and excitement here. It had 10-year-old me straight glued to the screen. The action set pieces in general just look really awesome and are definitely the best in the series. I mean, we already showed the one earlier with the black Waltz in the airship. Seriously, so cool. There's also a lot of ones later in the game involving various Eidolons, and I won't spoil these, but they look fantastic. All the environments look incredible as well. With that said though, I do actually prefer 8 character models, I think. However, it's mainly due to the style and character design. Like, there's no way you can make Queen Braun look good. She didn't just get hit with an ugly stick. An ugly branch from the Ifa tree fell down and hit that bitch smack dab in the face.
If that is a woman, it does look like she was beaten with an ugly stick.
It's a bit more than just that though. Like, characters like Garnet look amazing. But then you got guys like Kuja and... yeah, I don't know, he just looks kinda off to me. This is just a very minor nitpick though. As a whole, these FMVs are nothing short of spectacular. 9 is my personal favorite in the series, and I'll never forget how these FMVs immerse me into this charming, wondrous world. Yes, Final Fantasy had more FMVs on the PS1 than just 7 through 9. 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6 all got ports to the PS1 with brand new CGI cutscenes. I won't spend as long here, but let's just run through them. As you can see, this one for FF1 looks pretty damn cool. Gotta love a classic dragon fight, you know? However, FF2's opening looks even better. For a PS1 game, the CGI is crazy. This legit looks like it could have been on the PS2. That's because, well, it probably could have been. Final Fantasy Origins that this came out in 2002 in Japan and 2003 in North America. This is over a year after Final Fantasy X came out on the PS2. It's no wonder it looks so damn good. I know I didn't bring it up earlier, but yeah, this one might actually have the best CGI on the console. I bet a lot of people haven't even seen it either. The character models in particular look excellent, and the fight scene is animated so fluidly. Final Fantasy IV's FMVs, on the other hand, these are pretty rough. Easily the weakest link at a PS1 Final Fantasy CGI, but thankfully, we would get much better CGI later on. I think these look even worse in comparison because it came bundled with Chrono Trigger, and that port got anime FMVs instead, and these look awesome. These were animated by Toei, and given the Toriyama art style, it pretty much just feels like you're watching Dragon Ball with swords and magic. Just really cool stuff all around. Back to Final Fantasy, 5's FMVs are... okay. Don't get me wrong, Yoshitaka Amano is an absolute legend and his art is super unique. However, I just don't feel it translates that well to 3D renders. The faces just look kind of uncanny. The same thing goes for the FMV in 6. Plus, seeing Terra with blonde hair, it's just not right. I guess the environments look cool at least, but yeah, that's kind of it. Okay, this is the last Final Fantasy game we're going to talk about, I promise. Or Final Fantasy property, I guess. Chocobo's Dungeon 2 is just so damn charming though, man. Given the nature of the game, it obviously goes for a way more cartoony aesthetic, and it nails it. Like, look at the homie Sid here. I don't know what this dude's yibber-yabbering about, but he's channeling that cartoon energy. And Chocobo? Dude, he's so cute. I just want to give this guy a little hug. Oh, and look, he's got little flippers on. Oh shit, this dude is adorable. But yeah, there's just so much charm here. I love it. Xenogears uses a combination of anime and CGI cutscenes, and it's a really cool mix. It would use anime FMVs when showing longer, more dialogue-driven cutscenes. Then it would use CGI FMVs when either showing gears or larger scale events. Again, I'm not going to talk about the anime FMVs here, as this video would be like over an hour long if I were to include these, but they're quite intense and there is a lot of them. I really want to talk about these in a future video, so yeah, let us know in the comments if you want to see this. We don't get a whole lot of CGI here in comparison, but what we do get here is pretty damn awesome. Probably the coolest use of them though is the opening FMV. This uses a combination of anime and CGI, and for 1998, this is incredible. We also get voice acting too, and while it's not the best, it does add character.
Base code 85 million. 100 million. Its speed is overwhelming. Alpha 1 to raise your central. Access confirmed. Initializing fake net. Disconnected. Activating emergency shelter.
I just love the story this FMV tells though. We see the ship gradually get taken over by a hostile force, and you really feel that growing suspense. When all that text reading "You shall be as God" starts appearing all over screen and that choir kicks in, absolute chills, man. You can see the captain really start to panic here, but he remains calm and collected for his crew. That is, until he sees the evacuating civilians get annihilated along with the entire ship. It's at that point he accepts his fate, looks at his family one last time, smiles, and then makes a decision to self-destruct. It's a very poignant and hard-hitting scene. The FMV then finishes with a mysterious girl rising from the wreckage. We've gotten a lot of comments before asking, hey, who's that one girl from your intro zooming in on her eye? Well, here you guys go. The best part about this scene is that we don't understand any of it until the very end of the game, when it all finally makes sense. I think Xenogears is one of the greatest fictional stories ever told, and this enigmatic, gripping, opening FMV sets it perfectly into motion. Okay, Chrono Cross might have the most atmospheric FMVs on the entire console. A lot of the previous games' FMVs we've talked about have had music playing in the background, and there's nothing wrong with that, it creates distinct moods. However, Chrono Cross on the other hand, doesn't. You just get the ambient sounds and sound effects of what's going on, and that's basically it. It's a very interesting juxtaposition to go from the amazing music in-game to these, and creates this mysterious vibe. And not always, but a lot of the times in this game, the FMVs don't show something positive. Like you know shit's about to go down when these pop up. It sets these expectations right from the beginning of the game. Like this FMV you get in the first 10 minutes. The way that blood drips down the blade with a smirk at the end, this made me feel so uneasy as a kid. A certain sound effect that plays during a certain cut is also a massive foreshadow. I never realized that until much later on, but I thought that was a nice touch. Anyway, this section can't be complete without talking about the opening. Earlier I said that Final Fantasy VIII had one of the greatest video game openings ever, and, well, Chrono Cross, I think, does have the greatest. I also think Scars of Time just might be the greatest musical track in all of gaming. Those that know, and those that don't know, you know what? Chrono Cross deserves this treatment. Let's just play it out in full. It plays a lot of the coolest scenes from the game anyway, and the music goes perfectly with it, so it's worth watching. I will commentate over it though, just to avoid copyright. First of all, I always love this poetic text. It's so beautiful, and just makes me feel so nostalgic. Yet, even then, we ran like the wind, whilst our laughter echoed under cerulean skies. These lines always stuck out to me. I always thought Cerulean Skies would be a really cool name for an RPG too. Okay, this is when things finally start building up. You can feel the intensity steadily growing, along with your fascination and your attention. The shots of the dragons and Surge sailing, it all just creates such a strong vibe, and then boom, the violin hits. The way certain cuts time up with certain parts of the song, it's all just done so well. Took a little inspiration for our own intro actually. I love that shot of Harald jumping in the night. It's timed flawlessly and has such great atmosphere. I mean, the entire opening does, but yeah, you know what I mean. Big fan of the melody here, and the visual of the black dragon opening his mouth always really impressed me as a kid. It had so much detail and looked so realistic. This slow part with Kid on the beach might be my favorite part of the opening. This clip does appear in-game without a background track, but it's timed so perfectly here that it kind of makes it feel like it was made specifically for this part first. Just the entire opening is edited so well, I gain new appreciation for it each time I watch it. To all the people that worked on this part, man, hats off to you. You all straight up killed it. Even watching this now, writing this part of the script, I still get goosebumps. To me, it's an absolute masterpiece and the greatest video game opening I've ever seen. Alright, last Square game we'll talk about. 4-bit. Front Mission 3 had some awesome CGI though. Instead of a more stylized look, they went for more realism, and it looks amazing. They make some of these shots almost look real even. It's insanely impressive. We never see any humans in these, but we do see a lot of nice environments and cool looking mechs. Oh yeah, there's a lot of catastrophic events and disasters too, and they really nail the execution here. But yeah, Front Mission 3 though, really top-notch FMVs all around. Okay, I want to quickly mention a few other RPGs before we switch up genres. The Legend of Dragoon had some pretty memorable FMVs. It really starts off hot with the whole destruction of seals. Personally, I think it's the best looking FMV in the game. Shauna's face always looked so real to me as a kid. We also get some voice acting here, unlike Final Fantasy FMVs.
Who is she? That is not your concern.
This actually sounds decent, but later in the game, yeah, not so much. But yeah, overall, I think the CGI is pretty solid. It's definitely a step down from Final Fantasy 8 and 9, I think this is most evident in some action sequences later, but against most of the other competition on the PS1, it's holding its own and then some, for sure. Legend of Legai doesn't have a lot of FMVs, but what it does have is pretty cool. That monster at the beginning of the game absolutely freaked my 9-year-old self out. It really sets the tone for the rest of the journey. The coolest FMV came before the game even started though. If you let the title screen idle for a bit, you're treated to this really awesome intro. This immersed you into the game's world, way more than the main game ever could. Watching Vaughn, Noah, and Gala separately kick ass and then teaming up at the end, man, so damn cool. Star Ocean 2 is another one that doesn't have that many FMVs, but I do like what we get. You get a different FMV based on who you choose as your main character, and I thought that was pretty neat. When it came to character-specific FMVs though, fighting games were the real king. However, we'll get to those in just a bit. For now, it's time to cruise and vibe out.
He's the one for me. There's no place I'd rather be. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Racing games had some of the coolest intro FMVs, dude. As you just saw, the Ridge Racer Type 4 opening is such a vibe. I've had that girl singing Ridge Racer stuck in my head for like a week now, and I'm not even mad about it. It's just so damn catchy. Everything else about it too, the visuals, the transitions, it's just perfect. It's so wonderful encapsulation of that Y2K aesthetic. So chill, so vibey, so good. The Gran Turismo 2 opening is also quite immaculate. Again, the vibes here are just off the charts. Definitely another song that's sure to get stuck in your head for days. The FMV itself is also just shot and edited so well. Like, the actual CGI here isn't really that crazy. If you freeze frame, it's not really that crisp compared to a vehicle you would see in a Squaresoft game. However, the way it effectively uses camera angles and effects like lighting and reflections really adds a lot to the realism. Techniques like this can really go a long way with the presentation. Polyphony Digital truly was, or is, a master at this and have only gotten better. Gran Turismo 2 and Ridge Racer Type 4 probably have the most popular PS1 racing FMVs, and it's not hard to see why. I think I slightly prefer Ridge Racer's opening just because we get an actual person, but I think I kind of like the song in Gran Turismo 2's opening just a little bit more. I never knew this until now, but I guess between regions they actually change the song. With that said, there may be a little bit of bias at play here, but I do still like the US version the best. Another racing FMV that I think would have been a favorite of some people if they actually, got to see it is Racing Lagoon. This was a Japan-only Squaresoft title, and it's a real shame we never got to see it stateside. It's like a racing RPG, and the aesthetic here is truly something else. If Ridge Racer Type 4 captures that Y2K feel, then Racing Lagoon perfectly captures that 90s edge. I mean, just look at the fashion here, dude. It's a little time capsule of the streetwear from that era. You gotta love it. The opening FMV not only has really good CGI, but it has these really dope jazzy vibes too. There's no vocals here, but it's still super chill. Music just played such a big role in these racing FMVs in general. They really completed them. Chocobo Racing is a kart racer with some really nice CGI, but it basically just reuses models from Chocobo's Dungeon 2, so yeah, we won't really talk about it. I did want to bring it up though, because it's a nice segue into more mascot character FMVs. To be honest, I was always kind of disappointed that the PS1's more prominent platformers like Crash and Spyro didn't have CGI FMVs, but thankfully some other platformers would deliver on that. I think Klonoa is easily the PS1's most underrated platformer, and the FMVs really add a lot of charm. They really help you get absorbed into this incredibly endearing world. Compared to most other games in its genre, there's a bigger focus on story here, and it actually might be the best story I've ever played in a platformer. I won't spoil it, but the ending in particular is surprisingly emotional. The kind of type that can bring a grown man to tears, The game has been ported and remastered numerous times since, but I still think this version is the best one to play just because of these FMVs. It's a real shame that Klonoa never took off in the way that I think it deserved to. Oh well, the games we did get are excellent though. Pac-Man World was another Namco platformer with some nice CGI. I really love the opening outside shots. It just has this Saturday morning cartoon feel to it. It's so comfy. Between this and Klonoa and Ridge Racer Type 4, Namco definitely held their own with FMVs. Gotta give Crystal Dynamics a shout for those Gex FMVs as well. We showed a clip from Gex 2 earlier, but even Gex 1 had them, and of course Gex 3 did. Check out this Gex 2 ending though.
Pardon my tongue, darling.
Come over here, you big stud.
Bro, what? Who was this made for? You might be thinking, okay, maybe a little one-off sexual joke, and then you see the FMVs for Gex 3 and...
Hey, Tiger, guess where I am? Trapped in the media dimension. Rez is back, and he's kidnapped me to get to you. He's attacking your secret island cave.
Hey, speaking of secrets, you wanna see my...
Gex, quit clowning around and get me out of here.
Now he's trying to bang a real-life Playboy model. And no, I won't list her name, do your own research. It's really cool that we get a mix of CGI and live action, but on a scale of 1 to Master Roshi, how horny were you guys when making this game? This isn't even subtle at all. It gets even worse too. Check out these little briefings.
My big, strong Gexy has done it again. Love those bulging biceps.
These biceps are just the beginning, my fair maiden. Speaking of bulging... Did I just say that out loud?
Yep, I'm afraid you did.
I'm a bad boy.
Imagine playing this as a kid and your mom walking in during these parts. Like, oh hey mom, I'm playing that cool game you got me where you get a banging Playboy model as a reptilian creature. Thanks. But hey, it did leave a lasting impression at least, so there's that. Eggs of Steel is a puzzle platformer with some oddly impressive CGI for how not impressive the actual game is. You see, it was made by a visual effects studio, Rhythm and Hues, and it remains the only game they ever made. They've actually won numerous Oscars and Emmys for their work on stuff like Game of Thrones and Life of Pi, so it's just kinda weird they made this random little game in the 90s. If we're talking puzzle platformers though, we gotta talk Abe's Odyssey.
That's me. My name is Abe. I was Employee of the Year. Now I'm dead meat. I crossed the meanest boss in the world, Mullock the Gluckin.
There are a lot of FMVs here, and like the main game, they're very atmospheric. It has this very dark and unsettling feel, but not too much as there's a little bit of slapstick humor to balance it out. The character design is so creative here, and the world itself is really unique. The animation is done so well that it really brings it to life. Its sequel, Abe's Exodus, also had some awesome FMVs. They're not quite as dark either, as there's some more color and outside environments. I really like this one that starts off more CGI looking and then pans out to a more painted look. It's very artistic, it's good stuff. The Oddworld games just have such a, well, odd and weird and quirky and creepy atmosphere, but at the same time, they're undeniably captivating. What about games with full-on scary FMVs though? No comedic relief to ease the tension. Well, that brings us to our next genre.
What have we got here?
Survival horror games are all about atmosphere, so of course their FMVs would be as well. Resident Evil 2 and 3 are obvious examples. The first one used live action FMVs and maybe we'll get to these in a future video. For 1998 though, Resident Evil 2 had some pretty good CGI. I think they help you get a lot more immersed in the world than the first game did. We would get a different FMV to start the game based on if you choose Leon or Claire. After this, the FMVs are largely the same except for, Leon and Claire switching. But yeah, we do get a decent amount of FMVs here though. A lot of them are pretty long too, like 1 to 2 minutes or more. Resident Evil 3 had better CGI on a technical level, but I don't know, I kinda prefer 2's FMVs I think. The character models have more realism here, just maybe a little less style? I don't know, maybe just a personal preference. With that said, the environments do look great, and the Nemesis is pretty damn terrifying. Look at this guy. What a monster. The Resident Evil series had more action-y horror FMVs, but what about something that was more ominous, creepy horror? Well, Silent Hill's got you covered. The opening FMV actually has this really dope song playing over a montage, and I'd kind of argue it's not really fitting with the rest of the game, but it's still really cool nonetheless. The in-game FMVs are where the real scares happen. What these FMVs lack in length, they make up for in suspense. A lot of these are genuinely chilling and scary as hell. Silent Hill is often considered to be one of, if not the scariest PS1 game, and it's not hard to see why. I think they kinda knew this, too. After you beat the game, you get this blooper reel of FMVs, pretty similar to what you would get in some movies from the 90s or 2000s. It's kinda like they were saying, okay guys, it's just a game, no need to be traumatized, we're all having a good time here.
We like to have fun here.
Well, I say we, but these were actually all just created by one guy, Takayoshi Sato. He was so desperate to prove himself that he volunteered to do all these alone. Apparently, he was already doing a lot of work with 3D rendering and was even teaching some older employees how to do it, but they still wanted to give him a supervisor to essentially take credit, so he was like, no, I'm gonna do the whole thing by myself. And that he did. Only took him over 2 years and many nights sleeping under his desk.
So where is he?
I haven't seen him. He's definitely not under his desk sleeping. That's a fact.
Hats off to the Mad Lad. Your efforts did not go unnoticed, and you're a legend for it. Kudelka has some insanely impressive FMVs. There's a lot of them too, like 20 some minutes worth. This one's not a survival horror and is instead a turn-based RPG, but yeah, it's way more fitting here. It's funny, even though this is the precursor to Shadow Hearts in the PS2, I actually think I like the CGI here quite a bit more. The faces just look way better to me. These are definitely some of the best CGI character models on the system. Let's take it back to Squaresoft with Parasite Eve. This one's also more of an RPG and not technically a survival horror, but I mean, come on, it's obviously way more fitting here. Parasite Eve has some really gruesome FMVs though. So much so, in fact, that I'm actually not gonna show a lot of them just because I don't want to risk getting demonetized. But yeah, if you've played this game, you know what I'm talking about. Leave a comment below if that rat transformation scene haunted your dreams. But that said, some of the environmental shots are pretty gorgeous. This one looking out this one restaurant was always such a vibe to me. The actual character models are just okay here though. It wouldn't be until Parasite Eve 2 that they would really take things to the next level. Holy shit, these faces! This is easily PS2 quality. Hell, this would look good on the PS3. You see what I was talking about, Squaresoft, dude? Straight up goated. There's not as much animation here, I will say, but yeah, with renders like this, who cares? Just take in the beauty, my friend. Given that Parasite Eve 2 is already more of an action game, why not talk action game FMVs now? I'm gonna talk about the Tomb Raider series as a whole here because unlike Final Fantasy, the FMVs look fairly similar from game to game. There might be a bit of an improvement between entries, but not that much. Actually, I think I like the first game's FMVs the best, mainly for the set pieces though. Some of the character models can be... oof. But yeah, the FMVs themselves though, pretty engaging to watch. I really love that one where she kills those wolves in front of that temple, and of course the one we just showed a bit ago where she rides her motorcycle through the desert. This is just a really cool zine, complete with a swan dive at the end. Love that shot, man, so cool. God, she really has some big ass nerves though, just to hop on the boat like that, like 5 feet behind those guys. How do they not hear her? Fun fact, one of the coolest FMVs didn't even make it to the real game. However, they did later finally release it in the remastered version. We get a nice musical track here and some really pretty environmental shots. Tomb Raider definitely went for a more cartoony style with their FMVs rather than realism, but with scenes like this, I feel like they found a good balance. Tomb Raider 2 and 3's FMVs are... just kind of okay to me. We actually get less of them in these games than the first one, and overall, I feel like they're just really not that exciting. Like in Tomb Raider 3, there's barely 9 minutes of FMVs, and over 4 of those are just them hanging out on the boat with this flashback sequence. Like of all the things to spend half your game CGI on, why this part? Couldn't you have picked something a little more exciting? I mean, there is some action in the end, but I don't know if that long payoff is worth it. Plus in a Tomb Raider game, I want to see Lara Croft in action, not some random dudes. Another trilogy of action games with FMVs worth talking about is the Armored Core series. Well actually, I don't really have a whole lot to say here, but I did want to give them a shout out. I mean, CGI mechs will never not be worth admiring. Armored Core 3, Master of Arena, has some really dope FMVs in particular. It feels kinda weird to associate From Software with anything other than Dark Souls these days, but yeah man, they killed it here with Armored Core. Dino Crisis 1 and 2 had some pretty action-packed FMVs. The animation itself definitely looks pretty good, especially in 2. However, the quality is just quite blurry. Actually, more so in just the first one, really. 2 would make things a lot more crisp. This one just has awesome FMVs in general. There's multiple really cool action sequences, and they're all a joy to watch. That's not to say the first one doesn't have some cool ones too, though. Also, does Back to the Future exist in this universe, or is this dude just an idiot?
All set? It's time to make like a tree and get out of here!
It's leave, you idiot. Make like a tree and leave. You sound like a damn fool when you say it wrong.
Legacy of Kain, Soul Reaver, had a really immersive FMV opening. The dark fantasy atmosphere is strong, the tone is mature, and it just does a great job at hooking you into the narrative. With that said, I don't really have too much else to say here. Just a very cinematic and a very engaging intro. The medieval series had these very cartoony, dark, gothic-y FMVs. It's like, yeah, it's kinda spooky, but it's Tim Burton spooky. It's got like a splash of Looney Tunes in there as well. As you guys just heard a bit ago, the sound effects play a big part in that. But yeah, it's just a wonderfully creative, comedic, dark fairy tale-like vibe. It's good stuff. Fear Effect 1 and 2 didn't just have FMVs to watch in-game, but you interacted with them nearly every screen. They would just loop FMVs in the background to create really immersive, realistic environments. And yes, it took up as much data as you would imagine. These games weren't even 10 hours long, but still took up 4 discs. With all this said, I kind of messed up. I talked about these games in detail in our pre-rendered background video, even though they would have been a lot more fitting here. So if I were to expand on them here, I would just be saying a lot of the same stuff I've already said. Check out that video if you want to hear more about these titles though. Before we move on to our last category of fighting games, I want to give a quick shout out to Team Buddies. This is an action game, but yeah, it's obviously got a very cartoonish look. Not just in appearance though, the humor is pretty spot on. Again, I don't have a whole lot to say here, I just think this is an underrated title that deserves some more recognition. What better way to kick off this fighting section than the Tekken series? Out of all the series in this video, the Tekken series definitely showed the biggest improvement with this FMVs between each entry. I mean, one is just a meme at this point really. It's aged worse than my Zanga post from like 8th grade. Hats off for the effort, but that's probably about the only good thing I can say here. Tekken 2 would be a phenomenal improvement though. I know a lot of people prefer Tekken 2's opening over Tekken 3 and I'm inclined to agree. Like, yeah, the animation in CGI isn't done as well, but that song, dude, so chill. It makes for such a vibe, man, I love it. A lot of fighting games gave character-specific FMVs, usually after beating the game or something, and Tekken 2 was no exception. Okay, well I guess they were in Tekken 1 as well, technically, but I mean, yeah, come on dude, look at this shit. Again, the models aren't really that good, and the animation is pretty stiff, but the environments look so good here. All the nature locations just have such a beautiful aesthetic to me. Like June's ending when that bus pulls up. This is like peak PS1 FMV comfy aesthetic to me. This FMV is just so peaceful. Such a gorgeous shot to end it on too. Michelle has a really naturey, scenic ending as well. They capture such a wonderful atmosphere. I just can't get over how much I love this vibe. Love Kunimitsu's ending as well. I mean, practicing sword training in the forest with the Kitsune mask on will never not be cool. I kinda like King's ending too. It's a very wholesome scene. As good as these are though, Tekken 3's ending FMVs are even better. I mean, the CGI here in general is just by far the best. It's not even close. We showed Anna's ending a bit ago and hers is easily one of my favorites. A PS1 era pre-rendered beach is just max cozy. I think Tekken is one of the most notable examples when it comes to fighting series with joke character endings, and Tekken 3 really puts them on full display here. Like Kuma and Panda's ending, oh man, this is good stuff. Mokujin's is probably my favorite though. It's like a mixture of real scenery and CGI, and it looks really cool. I love how it ends with those little Mokujin creatures, whatever the hell they're called, actually playing Tekken. Quirky, random shit like this I'm all about. Speaking of quirky and random, Xiaoyu's ending gave us a fun little anime sequence. We get a version of a theme park for both her and Heihachi, and it's just a good time. Well, at least for Xiaoyu, as Heihachi gets his ass dropped at the end. Okay, enough Tekken, let's switch it up. Soul Blade had an incredible opening FMV. From a purely visual standpoint, I think I like it better than Tekken 2 and 3's openings even. There's just some really cool imagery here. The animation is also pretty solid. Oh yeah, who could forget that absolute banger playing in the background too. It's not quite on Tekken 2's opening song level for me, but it's still pretty good. Mortal Kombat 4's FMVs are, yeah, certainly something. They actually removed these from the N64 version. I feel kinda bad for them though. They missed out on Jarek's voice acting gems.
You can't drop me. You have to uphold the law. You have to arrest me. Wait, this is brutality. You can't do it.
Wrong, Jarek. This is not a brutality. This is a fatality.
The Black Dragon died with Kano. You're the last one, Jarek.
Never!
What's up with fighting game FMVs and dropping people off cliffs? Okay, we're coming full circle with this video. We started it off talking about Squaresoft games, and now we're going to end it talking about a few more. The first of which being Air Guys. This one came out between Final Fantasy 7 and 8 and kind of serves as a middle point for the two-game CGI. It's definitely better than 7's, just not quite on 8's level. In fact, if you play as one of the Final Fantasy 7 characters and beat the game with them, you actually get an FMV collage from that game. Pretty cool. As far as the original FMVs go, they're not bad. I think they look great, it's just the set pieces that are kind of whatever. I like Sasuke's atmosphere, Anoma's is pretty funny with him just slamming bowls of ramen, and Hans with the whole lights flashing on him, that's kind of a vibe. Besides these though, a lot of them don't do a whole lot for me. I think I prefer the character endings of Squaresoft's other fighting game, or games I should say. With the Toriyama art style, Tobal No. 1 and 2 are basically like alternate universe Dragon Ball. Seeing this style depicted in PS1 CGI is just so insanely cool. Tobal No. 1 only had an intro, but it's still pretty neat. Animation is definitely a little stiff and janky though. This part of them walking in the arena always cracked me up. Why are you guys walking like that? But yeah, love the vibe though. It's like the Otherworld tournament from Dragon Ball Z, man, I always love that saga even though it's filler. Tobal No. 2 never released outside of Japan, and it's a real shame. These FMVs are a huge improvement. We actually get character endings this time, and there's some really good ones here. Well, except for this one, I guess. This one kind of gives me nightmares.
Damn
Yeah, these are all pretty humorous. None of them are really that serious. Check out Il Goga's ending. Man, the dude she tells you not to worry about. Oh no, what are you doing, dude? Don't do it. No, he's fine. Speaking of fine, Chaco's ending. I mean, what is there really to say? We get a half-naked space chick with a gun. Yeah, I bet that got many of you. Just had this on in the background to stop what you were doing and look towards the screen. Our main man, Shuji, probably has my favorite ending though. He gets blacked out at some bar and then tips his entire prize money to pay for it all. Hey, Future Corbin here, quick after editing note. I think I misread this scene the first time around and he's actually just paying for everyone to party and eat and drink themselves. Anyway, back to past Corbin. A dude like this is above greed and earthly riches. He's just trying to have a good time. This feels like something Goku would do as well. Just replace alcohol with food. I love this nighttime vibe, it's so atmospheric. Also, what is Dude's bicep routine? How do they pop out more than his shoulders? Anyway, this place kinda reminds me of Midgar a bit. And, well, considering Midgar was like the first place I talked about, what better way to wrap things up? In our pre-rendered background video, I had this nice little outro that was all optimistic about seeing more of them in the future. For this video though, I can't really do the same. While these were ahead of their time, they were also a product of their time. As I mentioned all the way back in the beginning of the video, graphics are so good now that there will never be that same stark contrast between gameplay and cutscenes again. Even in non-AAA retro-style games like indies or smaller budget titles from bigger studios, CGI FMVs are just so expensive to make now that it would just defeat the entire purpose of budgeting in the first place. So yeah, sadly, these will never really exist the way they did in the past. But that's okay though, not everything is meant to stay in our lives forever. Sometimes things are simply just a passing section, one of life's many chapters. You shouldn't cling to the past, but there's nothing wrong with appreciating it and reflecting on some of its great memories. PS1 FMVs gave me some amazing memories growing up and sparked my imagination in a way that few things did. I couldn't wait to get home from school and see what wonderfully creative world I would be immersed into next. These FMVs may be from an era long gone, but their impact and place in gaming history will always be felt. Thanks for joining me on this journey. Alright, and that finally wraps up this video. Thanks for watching everyone, we hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please either consider hitting that like button or subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. This obviously was not a comprehensive list of every single PS1 game with FMVs, but I did cover most of the heavy hitters and a lot of my personal favorites. If there were some good ones I didn't talk about though, let us know in the comments below. As always, just want to give a huge thank you to our Patreon supporters, and of course an extra special shout out to our top patrons Chris Carnaccio, Derek Drost, Jesse Spencer, Jump Rock, and Sino. All of your support and generosity is very much appreciated. Other than that, thanks again for watching everyone and hope you have an awesome day. This is Corbin from Gaming Productions. Until next time.